Gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, is recognized for the purpose of an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk, and I ask unanimous consent that it be considered as read. It's Wasserman Schultz, number 1.
I thank Gentlelady. Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the Gentlelady is recognized for remarks on her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to offer an amendment that will provide some small measure of justice and perhaps even save taxpayers some money. The foreign aid freeze and termination of life-saving programs like emergency food and nutrition assistance have already resulted in hundreds of thousands of preventable deaths. 2.4 million malnourished children are at risk of missing critical nutritional support due to shrinking supplies of therapeutic foods. Cuts in ready-to-use therapeutic foods risk 14 million additional deaths, largely among children, before 2030. And some 350,000 have already died. I know that number might seem shocking, that it could have happened that quickly, but there are so many children living on the precipice of death from starvation that when we deprive them of this vital nutritional assistance, death is swift. Was it worth it? Was it worth the savings? Actually, we didn't save a dime. That money was already appropriated. Instead, the Trump administration is letting emergency food rot in warehouses or simply incinerating it, as Ms. McCollum referenced a little while ago. Just last week, they destroyed 500 tons of high-energy biscuits that could have fed 1.5 million children. Sounds like waste to me. And some of those millions of children are, in fact, wasting away. And by the end of this markup, several thousand more children, who this committee directed the president to feed, will succumb to starvation. In South Sudan alone, a child dies every 11 seconds from malnutrition. And there's nothing that we can do in fiscal year 2026 to reverse those avoidable deaths, which were inflicted by this administration, done all in their rush to fund tax cuts for billionaires. But what we can do is teach this administration what it means to be hungry. So my amendment is simple. When political appointees in this administration travel to countries where children are starving and dying as a result of their cruel, wasteful cuts to food aid, they can buy their own damn meals. If we can't afford emergency nutrition paste for malnourished children on the brink of death at 30 cents per unit, then we certainly can't afford to wine and dine millionaires and billionaires. And this administration, by the way, is littered with them. Trump has appointed more of them than any president in history. Now, a few of you might actually be thinking, so what? Starving children, they're just not my problem. Well, here's what the last moments look like for these children. I want you to listen. Babies who are too weak to cry. Kids who can't stand up or speak because their muscles have dissolved away. 4-year-olds who will never grow tall, with failing organs and sunken eyes. If not treated immediately with therapeutic foods, clean water, antibiotics, and clinical supervision, severe malnutrition can quickly lead to organ failure, coma, and death. And it has 300,000 times because of this administration's cruel cuts. Children under the age of 5 are especially vulnerable. If they happen to get a regular meal, they may not even be able to digest it. That's why American companies developed ready-to-use therapeutic foods. They're grown in America, manufactured in America, purchased from Americans. And you can feed them to a starving child without making them sicker. When they're traveling around the world on the taxpayer dime instead of a taste of the local fare, this administration should get a taste of their own medicine. Secretary Rubio has 4 jobs. He can buy his own lunch. But perhaps he will have a moment to reflect on what it means to be hungry, without knowing where your next meal will come from, or if it will ever come. And perhaps Secretary Rubio will remember why he used to be a champion of USAID. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time, and I urge adoption of my amendment.
Thank you, Gentlelady. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart, is recognized to respond to the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Look, let's get serious here, right? Nothing in this amendment will help 1 not even one hungry child or anybody anywhere. Nothing in this amendment will do that. Look, I understand that the challenges that either have occurred and may still remain in terms of ensuring programs that receive life-saving waivers get continued support in a timely fashion. But whatever one's views on the foreign assistant review and any review, or this foreign assistant review, why punish suffering populations abroad by hampering the ability of our political appointees, including the Secretary of State, to address a conflict, shelter, child protection, hunger anywhere in the world? Again, this amendment will not help one child, one human being, nobody, nothing, anywhere in the world. Look, I think these are serious issues. So again, I would urge a no vote on this amendment.
Thank the gentleman. The gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Frankel, is recognized to respond to the amendment.
Thank you. Of course, I support this very good amendment. And listen, what this amendment does, it gives us an opportunity to say there is no greater shame than to let children die of starvation when we have the ability to help. And I hope everybody's going to support this very fine amendment.
Are there other members wishing to speak on the amendment? Gentleman from Maryland is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hadn't planned to speak on this one, but I'm really struggling with what's going on here this morning. The chairman for the subcommittee said, let's be serious, and this is right after we do a vote to change the name to the Gulf of America. It's hard for me to figure this out. And we've got the food, as the gentlelady from Florida said. It's already been paid for, but we're going to let it rot or spend more money to destroy it. That's insane. I don't understand what's going on here with this. I really don't. But I do hope that we can try and find a way to move beyond whatever this is, because this is shocking to me. I'm astonished by what I'm witnessing today. Now, I know that there are ways for us to address these kinds of concerns. I would think much of this could have been addressed prior to today, so we wouldn't have to go through this process of amendments. And yeah, it's a symbolic amendment, but apparently my colleagues are voting almost everything down on the Republican side anyway. But I would say this, if I don't know. I'm letting people starve to death when we have the ability to address it we've got to be better than this. We really do. And so I urge my colleagues, can't do it on this amendment, I'm sure, but we've got to be able to find a way to address this issue at a minimum. Food that's already been paid for. Let's let it go so it can feed people, so these kids can stay alive. We ought to be able to do that. So I'll yield, unless somebody else wants the rest of my time, I'll yield back the balance.
Thank the gentleman. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Alford, is recognized to respond to the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I know this topic stirs a lot of interest, a lot of emotion, but let's deal in the facts. I'd like to submit for the record a CNN article, not Fox News, not OAN, not Real America's Voice, but CNN, dated July 16th of 2025, entitled, U.S. Set to Destroy 500 Tons of U.S. Taxpayer Emergency Food.
Without objection.
I'd like to quote from this the other side of the story. The rest of the story, as Paul Harvey once said, a State Department spokesperson confirmed that emergency food will be destroyed because they were unable to use it before its expiration. Quote, the expired lot was acquired under the last administration and purchased as a contingency for need beyond projections, resulting in the inability to deplete before expiration. Unfortunately, this risk is part of always being ready to respond to life-saving humanitarian needs with consumable commodities in remote locations around the world. USAID, the quote continues, has had to destroy commodities under previous administrations with similar circumstances. This is not unique. They said in a statement that the biscuits are specifically meant for populations that are moving from one place to another, such as in the wake of a natural disaster or fleeing from conflict. We currently have high-energy biscuits in warehouses around the world for those most in need. We always want to avoid destroying any commodities and do our best to find alternative uses for them. That's the fact. That's the quote. That's CNN. I submit it for the record. Now yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? Gentlelady from Ohio is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add 2 cents here because of the gentleman's statement. You know, the reason it was late is because of the lack of people with the shredding of wonderful people that work for the government of the United States all over the world, and they couldn't expedite the shipments. So I heard what the gentleman said, but there is a yield when you tell people leave these agencies all over the world. And the thing is, whether there's dying children in Gaza or there's dying children in Africa or hungry kids in our country, those biscuits could have been repurposed because those they were nutritional biscuits. They kept people alive. So my friends, take responsibility for what you are doing and recognize that your decisions and what happens over at the other end of Pennsylvania has consequences, and they are serious, and lives have been lost and are being lost as we sit here today and debate this. But I'm sorry the gentleman left the room, but there's a reason that those products weren't delivered, and it is morally wrong. Wrong. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady. Are there others wishing to comment on the amendment? The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I absolutely support the gentlelady's effort to bring to our attention what we're doing. The amendment is too narrow. Do not sit there and think you can avoid responsibility. It is us. Not just about the incident, and I agree 100% with the gentlelady from Ohio as to why it was not delivered. Now, I must say, however, in all honesty, I have a reservation about this. Because too often, what we do is we avoid responsibility by saying that some official who is carrying out policy ought to be punished. Our federal employees, Glenn. The fault is ours. Not just Rubio, not just employees of the State Department or former employees of USAID. The policies that have been pursued are exactly resulting in what the gentlelady from Florida had to say. And if Secretary Rubio ought not to be fed, nor should we. There are people hungry in America that we're not feeding, and other places in the world. So take to heart what gentlelady said in terms of those children who are going to die because we do not act. And we have constrained ourselves in our ability to act in the most egregious of cases so that we can cut taxes deeply on those who have the most.
Thank the gentleman. Are there others wishing to comment on the amendment? The gentlelady from New Jersey is recognized to address the amendment.
Chairman, I'm a little upset. So I apologize if my voice is quivering, but I've never experienced this kind of cruelty from government ever in my life, and I've been around a long time. I served in the executive branch of state government, in the legislative branch of state government, and now I get the blessing of serving in Congress. But what I've experienced with this administration, with this bill, and with every bill that's come before us is an intentionality to be cruel to those who are most vulnerable of us in this world. To stand by and watch suffering that we, as the richest country in the world, can do something to make life a little bit better. We can't solve all the problems, but we are walking away from participating in the solution of any problems. And I don't understand the dimension of that cruelty. I don't understand how anyone could think that it is okay to see children die from either not having enough food or not having enough medicine or whatever. We are human beings. We are all created by God. We're equal in His eyes. And I don't understand why we don't understand our responsibility to those among us who are in need. And so I support this amendment. I know that this is a discussion, this is an elevation of an issue to bring to our attention. It's an opportunity to speak again about the cruelty, but the changes that we can make right here as a co-equal branch of government, acknowledging our responsibility to humanity. And so with that, I support this amendment. And I would yield back unless there is a person sitting on one of these two tables that has a need for some of my time. I have 2 minutes left. So I yield to the creator of this amendment, if I might.
Recognized.
Mr. Chairman, are there others that?
Oh, gentlelady can still speak, and others will be able to speak, and the gentlelady will be able to close at the
Thank you.
appropriate time.
And I thank the gentlelady for yielding. You know, I'm not a terribly religious person, but I have found over my years in public service, repeatedly thinking about the expression, there, but for the grace of God, go I. It is so apropos, so applicable to each of us who had the good fortune of the accident of our birth as Americans, as American citizens, as people who, in most cases in this country, or certainly people who are situated class-wise like we are, that we would never have to face the kind of despicable, unspeakable hunger and death that I described in the presentation of my amendment, because we happened to be born here. And I just am so overcome by the cruelty contained in this bill that reflected in the venom from this administration to children and the desperately poor around the world who we are literally throwing into the ashes. And you know, we often say, our side of the aisle often says, I don't hear it as much from the other side of the aisle, that we are better than this. The gentleman from Maryland referenced that expression. I'm starting to wonder. I'm starting to wonder. I know there are some that are better than this. I can't find anyone in this administration or those who are supporting this legislation that would allow this to be described as better than what we know that reference means. We have a choice. We can let children starve to death, or we can stand up and we can and we can take a stand and make sure that we say no to the cruelty, no to discarding people who we have just decided are irrelevant. I know when I gave birth to my children, they were my greatest blessing. And we need to be thinking about children across the world, like in the way that we think of our own children. They matter just as much. Let's treat them that way. I urge adoption of my amendment so we can hold ourselves accountable. So we can make sure, Mr. Chairman, if I'm the last speaker, I have another minute.
You're not yet the last speaker. You
Okay.
have the
Well, I will
last
come back to
speaker,
myself.
But you're 50
That is
seconds over time.
No problem. I'll yield back and continue.
I
at that
appreciate the
moment.
gentlelady. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized to address the amendment.
I share some of my colleagues' absolute bafflement. I don't even know if that's a word. I'm puzzled. I'm baffled. I am so confused. This amendment is symbolic to say, let's us, or let's those in the administration who have sat silently by as USAID has been shuttered and taken down to about, I think, 70 folks to administer in maybe the entire Middle East region. It is the cruelty. I kept saying that the cruelty was just an offshoot. It was an unintended offshoot. No, this is the point. Watching children starve, watching adults die of diseases that are something we can handle. We're telling you the numbers. But as Ms. Wasserman Schultz described, and at the beginning of the painful death that is starvation, in the end, the child doesn't move at all. And I read that the child's eyes are the last thing to move. They follow looking for help because they have no energy, they have no ability to move because they're starving. This is not dying from an incurable disease, they're starving. And the tons of aid that we destroyed, it expired and or rotted because this administration shut off distribution. Let's be really clear about that. That's waste. That is fraud. Defrauding the global planet. We had food here, we had nutrition here, we had biscuits here, we had paste here. And yet we're going to let it rot. And then we're going to incinerate it. I don't understand why you're not all screaming that we have to restore aid, foreign aid to save starving children, just as we have done for decades under both types of administrations, Democratic and Republican. I don't know why you're not screaming. But the cruelty is the point. And the silent support for the most incompetent, corrupt, and cruel administration is something I will never understand. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady. Gentlelady from Texas is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to thank the sponsor of this amendment for bringing this forward and for being the conscience of this committee on this issue in a moment where it's clear we desperately need to be more compassionate and to understand the consequences of what we're doing here. And I echo the same concerns and disbelief that my colleagues have mentioned. You know, I am a very sensitive person. It's hard for me to see photographs of starving children or any helpless creature suffering. And even as a kid, I could never watch something on television without just weeping and bursting into tears and thinking, why don't people do something about this if they can? And here's the irony. We are the people, everyone in this room has the unique ability to do something because we can. You know, just a couple of weeks ago on the House floor, there was a bill that allocated tens of billions of dollars for immigrant detention. There was a bill, the reconciliation bill, $80 billion for ICE alone. 40 billion of that for detention. Much of that will go to private corporations that will be enriching themselves and their shareholders with this money. And at the same time, this Congress is taking money away from starving kids, because that is literally what is happening. These are all choices that we make, and this is a really devastating choice. Obviously, we don't support this choice. We believe there's another path. There are alternatives. There are ways to fund this. We could make the wealthiest Americans and corporations pay their fair share, and we could provide health care for Americans. We could provide for nutrition programs for Americans, and also help some of the most vulnerable beings on the planet at the same time. It doesn't have to be an either or. Either we help US citizens or we help people abroad, because frankly, this is how this is normally framed, as though this is some kind of zero-sum game. It really isn't when we look at our tax code and when we look at the decisions made in the recent reconciliation bill to transfer wealth from some of the poorest Americans to some of the wealthiest Americans. And here we go again. This Congress in a really dark moment. But we, those of us in this room, when we think about people who have the power to make a difference, we do. We do. We're the Appropriations Committee of the United States House of Representatives. In this room are the people who can make that choice, who can make that difference, who can save those babies. The question before us right now is, what choice will we make? And to my colleague from Florida, I am with you and I am ready to make that choice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Carter, is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I've been pondering this issue. From the CNN report, we found out that the expiration date had expired on the food. My wife probably wouldn't want me to tell you this. I've been married to this beautiful young lady for 57 years. But she was born, she's Dutch. The Canadians liberated Holland. And when we came up with our plan to feed Europe, somehow the Dutch got left out of it. And so from 1946 to 48, the Dutch got no food, plus the fact that the harbors all froze up. They had the worst winter in ever. And so the Dutch starved. So my wife lived with starvation, as a child, all the children in Holland lived with starvation. We figured out our mistake, and we corrected it with literally dropping food into those people who were not under fire, and the war was over. Now, I tell you that story because there's another thing that I learned as a young lawyer. when I was with the Ag Committee in Texas, that California had something called marketing orders. And when they grew fresh fruit or vegetables, they wanted only the best to be there, so they destroyed the mediocre. It made their market stronger. It made more people want to buy California fruit and vegetables because the marketing orders had destroyed the mediocre or not so perfect fruit and vegetables. Texas was going to try marketing orders, and to me it sounded crazy, but I think we finally did. I don't remember that. It's really irrelevant. But the question we have to ask ourselves, who decides when a piece of biscuit is bad? And put the label on it that says, you can't eat this. Because my wife would have eaten it. And I believe we started that program of putting those things on there, the American public. It may have been international. I don't know. But the question is, my children believe that, and they won't touch anything that is one day past that schedule. But we will, my wife and I will, and my wife surely will, because she will say it's still good food and we're going to eat it. Now, the real issue here is that the psychology of a date on a piece of dried food made them feel like they had to destroy it because someone might get sick. So we're talking about something that we created, that if in a world where we were not dealing with starving people, we would say, oh, you can't eat that. The expiration's passed. But they would have eaten it. So it really lies on our view of the world, not theirs. And the truth is, we ought to get more food over there that's not expired, but that expiration date was ridiculous to starving people. And that's the real issue. A date on a piece of dried food that says it's not good. They probably would have eaten it anyway if they're really starving. I yield back.
Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? Seeing none, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate all my colleagues who stood up and lent your voice to help make sure that we shine the whitest, hottest spotlight on what we are about to do and have been doing since the beginning of this administration that has caused the starvation and death of millions of children. And I have tremendous respect for Judge Carter, and we can have a conversation about expiration of food another day. But this food expired because the richest man in the world instructed our government to lock it up and not give it out. He was rewarded with a massive tax cut, and the children starved to death. That's why this food expired. Thanks, Mr. Alford, for sharing both sides of the story, though, because the reason that food was not available is because our government kept it off limits and instructed that it not be distributed. That's the real story. I know a lot of us are better than this. I hope someone finds a conscience in here somewhere and decides when we get to the end of this process that we're not going to abandon our principles and not step back from what the United States has always been. I know I won't. We each have to answer that question ourselves. I yield back the balance of my time and urge the support of my amendment because someone has to be held accountable.
Thank the gentlelady. Questions now on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Florida. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. and the amendment is not agreed to. Gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, is recognized for an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent that the amendment that I'm offering be considered as read.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentlelady is recognized for remarks on her amendment.
Thank you. This is Wasserman Schultz number 2. I rise to offer an amendment in pursuit of the bipartisan objectives that this bill is designed to address: preventing migration, countering crime, and reducing unaccountable wasteful spending. According to this bill, the quote, America First Opportunity Fund will, quote, furnish assistance that makes America safer, stronger, and more prosperous, unquote. It's more than a little vague. And if I was born yesterday, that would probably sound pretty good. But I'm old enough to remember when Republicans called themselves the party of fiscal responsibility. That is, before they passed a bill that increased the deficit by $3 trillion to give tax cuts for the rich in the dead of night. So here's what this account really is: an unmonitored billion-dollar slush fund for President Trump and his cronies to buy favors for their rich friends. This MAGA slush fund sucks $1.7 billion out of programs that disrupt drug trafficking and stop wars from breaking out. It takes money from accounts that arm our allies with American-made weapons, train law enforcement to go after terrorists, and help freedom fighters push back against dictators. In other words, it's only an opportunity fund if you're seeking opportunities to smuggle fentanyl, run guns for Hamas, or buy yourself a pardon with Trump's meme coins. This slush fund has no oversight, no authorization, no transparency. I'm talking about a slush fund in this bill that we are voting on, and no mandate beyond platitudes. So why is it in the bill? Well, because Donald Trump asked for it. He wants less expert-driven foreign assistance that supports our interests. Instead, Trump wants $1.7 billion in taxpayer funds under his direct control, not our control, his direct control, because he believes he knows better than the experts, and because his personal interests take precedence over the national interests. Let's be clear. We should not be cutting a blank check for the lawless authoritarian who has usurped this committee's constitutional authority to appropriate funding and who has violated the law repeatedly by withholding funding that is law. But of course, I want America to be strong and safe and prosperous, and I know everyone in this room agrees. So I thought to myself, which agency best represents those principles with the best bang for every buck? And the answer was clear: the Inter-American Foundation, or the IAF. For decades, the IAF has been on the front lines of countering criminal activity, illegal migration, and malign foreign influence in the Western Hemisphere. They deliver funds directly to grant recipients across the Americas, with a focus on areas with high levels of out-migration and criminal presence. It's 100% localized, with less than 9% of their budget supporting administrative costs, most of which is used to carefully screen and audit grant recipients. IAF makes us safer by stabilizing at-risk communities, whether it's by keeping young men out of gangs or helping farmers switch from growing coca for cartels over to growing coffee and fruit for American consumers. IAF makes America stronger by serving as a counterweight to the Chinese Communist Party in rural areas that traditional diplomacy just doesn't reach. They build community resistance to illegal mining and fishing by Chinese companies, and they improve the overall perception of the U.S. in Latin American countries. And the IAF makes us more prosperous by reducing the drive to migrate illegally, which protects our workforce and helps connect grant recipients with U.S. companies to diversify away from China and create more American jobs. They do all that with a budget of less than, wait for it, $50 million. For every dollar Americans invest, grant recipients commit $1.36. It creates true sustainable development and local ownership. The Inter-American Foundation is a model of how foreign aid could work and should work. That's why they've impacted millions of lives despite their small footprint. Despite this historic, proven success, Trump and DOJ tried to shut IAF down anyway, but they lost in court. This bill only includes $10 million for IAF, the same amount that the White House has designated for shutdown costs. In other words, they want Congress to do their dirty work by shutting down this low-cost, high-impact independent agency. But I would submit that $20 million in IAF's hands would do a lot more good than $1.7 billion in Trump's slush fund. I hope my colleagues will agree to this amendment that will ensure this so-called opportunity fund doesn't miss out on an opportunity to protect the IAF and protect our interests across the Western Hemisphere. Thank you. I yield back the balance in my time and urge the adoption of the amendment.
Thank the gentlelady. Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart, is recognized to respond to the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the gentlelady's amendment. While I greatly appreciate the intent to support the Inter-American Foundation, the America First Opportunity Fund should remain unrestricted. This amendment is at odds with the intent and purpose of this fund, which was established to provide the Secretary the ability to respond to emerging crises, opportunities that are in America's best national security interests around the world. So again, I cannot support this amendment, which changes the nature of the fund we created in the bill to be flexible and to be a strategic tool for the Secretary. So again, respectfully, I urge a no vote on this amendment. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Frankel, is recognized to respond to the amendment.
Thank you. I rise in strong support of very, very good, strong amendment because I support the funding for the Inter-American Foundation, an agency that plays a quiet but powerful role in addressing one of the most pressing challenges we face, irregular migration to the United States. Folks, last month we passed the Republicans, I should say, in their big, beautiful, ugly, whatever it was called, bill, they spent $170 billion on immigration enforcement, including $46 billion on this wall. And let's be clear. People don't leave their homes, their families, their communities, unless they feel they have to, if there's no food on the table, no job to go to, no school for their children, no safety on their streets. And that's why this IAF organization is so important, because it tackles those root causes of migration head on before people are forced to make the dangerous journey north. And IAF's model is unique. It cuts through the red tape and goes straight into the source, community-based organizations on the ground. It supports farmer cooperatives, women's groups, youth associations, and indigenous communities with the tools they need to build opportunity and stability at home. And over 70% of IAF grantees work in high migration areas, including the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Let me give you an example of what it looks like in practice. In western highlands of Guatemala, where environmental erosion and economic despair had driven thousands to migrate, the IAF funded a local indigenous organization to scale up mushroom and pea production. Sales rose by 2,800%. Unemployment jumped 1,000%. And with the addition of youth program, migration from the region dropped from 15% of junior high students per year to just 1%. So listen, to me, that's smart policy. In Honduras, a young man named Wilmer, once deported from Mexico, used IAF-backed scholarship to finish law school. He's now staying in Honduras to build a future there. Multiply that by thousands of stories, and you begin to see IAF's real power, giving people a reason to stay, to hope, to thrive at home. And let me say this again. The IAF reduces the drivers of migration, not by building walls, but by building futures. I urge my colleagues to support this very critical funding, and I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Dean, is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank the ranking member and the chairman. I rise in support of this amendment, and I commend Representative Wasserman Schultz in seeking transparency for the use of American First Opportunity Fund and in support of IAF resources. Section 7049 appropriates $1.7 billion for the America First Opportunity Fund with no clear mandate. Other funding accounts make the mission of their appropriations very clear. food security, counter drug trafficking, nonproliferation, health security, water security, you name it, specific and clear. Yet the language for the American First Opportunity Fund states it will, quote, make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous by responding to crises, engaging proactively with strategic partners, and countering threats from adversaries, end quote. This statement is not a mission statement of a single funding account. All funding accounts are required to align with our national security interests and make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous. That is for every single account. Instead, what we have here is a slush fund with no established congressional oversight mechanism. It only begs more questions. How will the administration or even Congress prioritize the range of humanitarian, global health, education, and peacekeeping efforts that could be possible with these funds? How will a discretionary fund without discernible priorities allow appropriate monitoring and evaluation, measurement of impact, and ensure accountability? What controls will be in place to ensure this funding account will not be used for personal or political benefit of anyone in the administration? We've already seen numerous deals that directly benefit the President Trump, and his family members. We cannot support a vague, open-ended funding account that contributes to this type of high-level, in-your-face, out in the open corruption. I encourage all to support Representative Wasserman Schultz's amendment that brings the needed transparency, direction, and oversight to this funding account, and I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? Seeing none, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank my colleagues who stood in support of the amendment. If you have ever had a chance to travel on a congressional delegation trip to Latin American countries, you have seen the benefit of the resources and programming from the IAF, the Inter-American Fund. It is a major, major deterrent to people who are in other countries struggling with major difficulties, and we help through our resources not only transform life in Latin American countries, but also having the added benefit of making it unlikely, because most of these immigrants, these potential immigrants, want to remain in their own home country and not have to trek across the continent to come here for a better life. If we make their life better and help make their life better, then we are less likely to deal with the impact of their migration. So that is the value of ensuring that we have $20 million available to the Inter-American Fund. It's a no-brainer, and I urge your adoption of the amendment.
Thank you, gentlelady. The question is now on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Florida. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not adopted. Gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, is recognized for an amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk, Wasserman Schultz number 3, and I ask unanimous consent that it be considered as read.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentlelady is recognized for remarks on her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today to offer an amendment to restore funding for family planning services for the world's most vulnerable women and strike harmful anti-woman riders that prevent them from getting necessary medical care. My amendment would restore funding to the United Nations Population Fund to provide contraception, prevent maternal deaths, and counter gender-based violence, including female genital mutilation and sexual abuse of children around the world. Republicans want to cut this funding under the false and malicious justification that these funds have been used for, quote, forced abortions. But we know that the organization itself rightfully characterizes reproductive coercion of any kind, including forced pregnancy, as an act of violence. I'm appalled by the majority's attempt to hide behind culture war buzzwords to deliberately endanger women and girls at home and abroad. Because as written, this bill would cut global health assistance for reproductive health care services like contraceptives, prenatal and postnatal health care, and STD screenings. And that would have devastating consequences. Experts estimate tens of thousands of unsafe abortions and maternal deaths will result from this policy. It would leave young women and girls even more vulnerable to gender-based violence, including reproductive coercion and intimate partner violence. This cut would especially hurt the nearly 1 in 3 women in developing countries who become mothers while they are still children themselves. And it would do all of this when we know complications from giving birth remains the leading cause of death and injury for these adolescent girls. There is nothing pro-life about that. But these poisonous riders aren't surprising. It's just the ongoing Republican crusade against women's reproductive freedom. The same attacks that the American people have time and time again rejected here at home. And we will not stand for spreading this assault on women around the world. Every woman, here or abroad, should have access to the resources they need to make that choice of when, whether, and how to start a family. When women have those opportunities, it can stabilize developing countries and promote economic growth. It's repulsive that after years of ramming far-right bills like this down the throats of Americans, Republicans would now risk throwing away America's global leadership on an issue as important as women's health. So let's scrap these poison pills and pass a budget that invests in reproductive health, supports strong families, and curbs gender-based and sexual violence everywhere. This amendment would move us in that direction. It would eliminate the partisan, dangerous, and frankly anti-women provisions of this bill that would endanger the health and safety of millions of women and children. And I'm sure none of my colleagues here want the preventable deaths of women across the globe on their conscience. I urge you all to support this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, gentlelady. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart, is recognized to respond to the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to this amendment. This amendment strikes language that would ensure that no taxpayer funds are provided to any foreign non-governmental organization implementing global health assistance that performs or promotes abortions, and strikes a funding cap for family planning programs in the bill. The amendment also strikes the prohibition on funds on the UNFPA. This organization is an unaccountable bureaucracy that has track record of funding, well, to say the least, controversial programs, notably in communist China. Let me repeat that. Notably in communist China, that do not align with core American values and which actively undermine U.S. interests. Now, look, there's no secret that the Biden administration demonstrated repeatedly its propensity to find and fund organizations abroad with radical and extreme agendas, resulting even in a Helms violation. No, see, I believe it is our duty to strengthen, not weaken, pro-life protections in our bill. And you've all heard me say this before. U.S. foreign assistance dollars must be used in common sense priorities. Americans do not support using foreign assistance to fund abortions or other controversial programs overseas, and this bill reflects that. So again, I urge a no vote on the amendment, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Frankel, is recognized to address the amendment.
Well, you know, my. Here we go again. You know, once more, we're forced to defend a woman's health care from political ideology that has no place in a federal funding bill. I rise in strong support of this amendment because it makes a commitment to improving women's health and expanding access to reproductive care around the world. Instead of using this bill to play politics with women's bodies, we should be using it to save lives, to ensure that women, no matter where they live, have access to the information, the services, and the support they need to make decisions about their health, their families, and their futures. You know, it's bad that year after year we are compelled to swallow what we call the Helms Amendment. Federal government does not pay for abortions. Some of us would like to change that. That's not what this discussion is about. But this is about something more than that, because the Republicans this year have gone even further with their radical anti-woman agenda, slashing funding for family planning programs that save lives, prevent millions of unplanned pregnancies, and offer women a chance, a better future. Stopping unplanned pregnancies with contraception. I do think that also prevents abortion. Am I correct about that? Yes, I think so. Zeroing out funding for the UNFPA, a trusted global partner working in more than 150 countries to provide reproductive care, combat gender-based violence, and support maternal care. And they do not fund abortions in China. That's an old talking point. That's not true. And Republicans now reimposing the global gag rule. I'm gagging because that's what it does. It basically, the policy is so extreme it bars providers from even discussing abortion, forcing clinics to choose between desperately needing funding and honest conversations with their patients. You cannot say the word abortion. Don't say the word abortion or you're going to lose your federal funding. Okay. Well, I'm going to say it loud and clear. Women, not politicians in Washington, should have the freedom to decide whether and when to start or grow their families. This freedom is essential, it's non-negotiable, and yet Republicans year in, year out seem to determined to strip it away. Again, this is not about restricting abortion in this. They're making it harder for women to avoid an unplanned pregnancy in the first place. This is crazy. It's confusing. I don't understand it. Taking away funding for contraception, sexual health education, economic empowerment. What sense does that make? It doesn't make any sense at all. And it's just going to hurt people all over the world. I'm not going to keep going on and on other than to say this. Again, no matter where they live, women deserve control over their own bodies, the right to make their own decision about when or whether to grow or start a family. That's whether they're here or there or any place. Pass this amendment, and I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. The gentleman from Alabama, who is 60 years old in one day today.
One day, yes.
Is recognized to address the amendment.
I'm able to stand up here. I will speak to this amendment. And of course, I rise in opposition. First, I'd like to thank Chairman Diaz-Balart for his work on the bill and for producing some strong legislation. In all due respect to my colleagues from Florida, we have heard a lot from our colleagues this afternoon and this morning about standing up for the committee and standing up for our Article I responsibilities. I would say here's a chance to rectify the previous administration's disregard for the will of Congress on this important issue. I'd like to highlight the history of the policy which this amendment seeks to strike. The Mexico City policy, as many of you know, was introduced by President Ronald Reagan at the 1984 UN International Conference on Population Development in Mexico City. This policy requires that foreign NGOs must agree as a condition of receiving U.S. funds that they would neither perform nor actively promote abortions as a method of family planning with any source of funding, including non-U.S. funds. However, under President Biden, the State Department not only rescinded the Global Protect Life rule, but also ignored the long-standing Helms Amendment by allowing tax dollars to pay for abortions abroad. This action by the former president and also the amendment before us is out of step with the will of the American people. According to a Marxist poll, 78% of Americans, and that's including 61% of Democrats, oppose the use of tax dollars to support abortion internationally. Thankfully, at the beginning of this term, President Trump reinstated the Mexico City policy through Protecting Life and Global Health Assistance with updated and significant expansions. We must protect this policy and stand in line with the will of the American people. I once again thank the subcommittee chairman for setting this right, and I yield back.
Thank gentlemen. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? Seeing none, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Poll after poll in the United States has shown that the American people support women being able to make their own reproductive choices, including the decision to terminate a pregnancy. Let's be clear here. I can assure you that we don't need to poll whether Americans support female genital mutilation or domestic violence or defunding contraception, all of which defunding the population fund that this bill does would zero out. And if you think that women across the globe not having access to those resources isn't going to cause us problems, then you really haven't been paying attention. So this is about human rights, and human rights being applicable to men and women, and us not having only one gender free from having their health care legislated into oblivion, and one gender having nearly every decision that we make about our bodies regulated by law. It's unacceptable, and this amendment would correct that. And I urge your adoption. And yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. The question is now on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Florida. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Roll call has been requested. Sufficient number of hands have been raised. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Adderholt. Mr. Adderholt, no. Mr. Aguilar. Mr. Aguilar, aye. Mr. Alford. Mr. Amadei. Mr. Amadei, no. Mrs. Bice. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, aye. Mr. Calvert. Mr. Calvert, no. Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter, no. Mr. Case. Mr. Case, aye. Mr. Siscomani. Mr. Siscomani, no. Mr. Klein. Mr. Klein, no. Mr. Cloud. Mr. Clyburn. Mr. Clyburn, aye. Mr. Clyde. Mr. Clyde, no. Mr. Cole.
No.
Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Cuellar. Ms. Dean. Ms. Dean, aye. Ms. DeLauro.
Aye.
Ms. DeLauro, aye. Mr. Diaz-Balart.
Nope.
Mr. Diaz-Balart, no. Mr. Edwards. Mr. Edwards, no. Mr. Elzey. Mr. Elzey, no. Ms. Escobar. Ms. Escobar, aye. Mr. Espaillat. Mr. Espaillat, aye. Mr. Fleischman. Ms. Frankel.
Aye.
Ms. Frankel, aye. Mr. Franklin. Mr. Franklin, no. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Guest. Mr. Harder. Mr. Harder, aye. Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris, no. Mrs. Hinson. Mrs. Hinson, no. Mr. Hoyer. Mr. Hoyer, aye. Mr. Ivy. Mr. Ivy, aye. Mr. Joyce. Ms. Captor. Ms. Captor, aye. Mr. LaLota. Ms. Lee. Ms. Letlow. Ms. Letlow, no. Mr. Levin. Mr. Levin, aye. Ms. Malloy. Ms. Malloy, no. Ms. McCullum. Ms. McCullum, aye. Ms. Ming. Ms. Ming, aye. Mr. Molinar. Mr. Molinar, no. Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, no. Mr. Morelli. Mr. Morelli, aye. Mr. Mervan. Mr. Newhouse. Mr. Newhouse, no. Ms. Perez. Ms. Pingree. Ms. Pingree, aye. Mr. Pocan. Mr. Pocan, aye. Mr. Quigley. Mr. Quigley, aye. Mr. Reschenthaler. Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, no. Mr. Rutherford. Mr. Rutherford, no. Mr. Simpson. Mr. Simpson, no. Mr. Strong. Mr. Strong, no. Mrs. Torres. Mrs. Torres, aye. Miss Underwood. Miss Underwood, aye. Mr. Valadeo. Mr. Valadeo, no. Miss Wasserman Schultz. Miss Wasserman Schultz, aye. Mrs. Watson Coleman. Mrs. Watson Coleman, aye. Mr. Womack. Mr. Womack, no. Mr. Zinke. Mr. Zinke, no.
Does any member wish to record their vote or change their vote? Gentleman from Tennessee.
Mr. Fleischman, no.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Joyce, no.
Gentlelady from Oklahoma.
Mrs. Bice, no.
Gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Alford, no.
Gentleman from Mississippi.
Mr. Guest, no.
Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Cloud, no.
Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Lalota, no.
Gentlelady from Nevada?
Ms. Lee, aye.
Gentleman from Indiana?
Mr. Mervan, aye.
Are there other members wishing to vote or change their vote? Seeing none, the clerk will tally. On this vote, the ayes are 26, the noes are 33. The amendment is not adopted.